Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Derrick with Playbook Systems. I promised some stories, so I'm going to tell you some. When we talk about the work waste paradox, as I call it, only a fraction of the work done at work is work. What we mean by that is that just because somebody's in the building doesn't mean they're adding value to your customer or to your company. So it's important to understand the ratio, right? What is the amount of time that people spend adding value, and what is the amount of time they spend might be screwing off, but for the most part, it's not. It's doing trivial, meaningless tasks, sitting in endless meetings. So I want to give you some examples and stories from my time as a consultant that will maybe overemphasize how this can get out of control inside companies. So in one instance, I worked with a large factory here in the Phoenix metro. They were really having a problem, not only hiring people, because it was a very difficult type of work environment. It was warm, it's 120 degrees in the summer here. They didn't have air conditioning. It was very menial tasks. It was very repetitive, and they were always having a hard time keeping people and hiring people and getting in and training and having skilled people work there. So they asked me to come in and see if we could improve the process so that it would reduce not only the frustration and the challenges that they had with people that working there, but actually reduce the amount of people that they needed on the floor. So one of the things that I love to do in these setups is I love to put Fitbits on people. I love to get drone footage if we can. I like to tap into the cameras, and I like to just sit there and watch what happens. And then I try to determine ask myself the question, is what this person's doing right now work, or is it waste? And one of the examples I think that was probably the most prevalent example of waste inside of a business is we were watching these lines, and we were tracking everything that was happening on the lines and trying to determine other ways to improve things. But we happened to notice this one gentleman was carrying a box, and he walked through the scene multiple times while we were looking at this, couple of hours of footage and trying to determine these things. And it always seemed like he had the same box. He came in and out of screens multiple times. We started looking at other lines, and we saw the same exact guy just walking in the background. Sometimes he would stop and talk to people. Sometimes he would just be walking through the scene. But over and over and over, we kept catching this guy with this box on the camera. So we finally started just tracking him, and we could never determine what he actually did other than carry this box. He did tend to stop primarily to speak with female employees that were about his age. But for the most part, all day long, he walked with a box back and forth throughout the facility. So we mentioned this to management. Management did a little bit of investigation and determined that this guy actually was hired about 6 months before. The day that he was hired, he was assigned to work in the shipping and logistics department. The day he was hired, the manager of that department walked out and quit. Somehow in the process, he was assigned to go out and do this duty in the shipping department. There was no leadership in the shipping department. So he picked up a box and just started walking around and not really doing anything, but just making himself look busy. And for 6 months, he collected a paycheck while walking around with a box. Now that is an extreme example, and I hope that you don't have that kind of stuff that goes on in your business. But it goes to show that in these type of situations, if we aren't tracking and looking at what people are doing and separating those things out and saying, this is actual work, this is not work, what we tend to find is that people will fill the time with what we refer to a lot of times as hustle, right? I've worked with lots of companies where I've walked in and see people running all over the place, and they've got things in their hand and they're pushing carts and they're doing all this stuff. And management looks at me and they're like, wow, isn't this exciting? Look how much energy is going on here. And the first thing that I say is, well, this very, very obviously have a problem. If people are hustling and having to move around and do all of these kind of things, either your operation isn't set up very efficiently, people don't know what they're doing, so they're constantly scrambling, or another story I'll tell a little bit later, the people only really move when you're physically present. All of the rest of the time, they don't do anything, but they're trying to make themselves look busy because you're physically on the floor and they see you on the floor. So they want to stand out. So they grab something and they just move it around. So that's one of these little stories. I'll give you lots of other ones. I've got plenty of them. And if you want to sit down and read some longer stories from my work as a consultant, We got 2 books out, the Frontline Manager's Playbook and the Lean Manager's Playbook, that both are fictional stories about characters going through the process of leaning out their business. In this instance, it's a restaurant. In this instance, it's manufacturing. And there's lots of little relatable stories in here that I will tell you, although this is a work of fiction, everything that happens in these books actually is something that I've seen throughout my time as a consultant. Until next time.